Drogon watched Jon Snow kill his mother and did nothing. Not a scratch, not a warning blast, nothing, just a dragon staring at the man cradling his dead mother's body, weeping and then turning away. People lost their minds over this. Half the internet called it a plot hole. Critics said it was the show refusing to deal with its own consequences, and honestly, I get why it looked that way, because on the surface, it made no sense. Drogon had torched entire armies for Daenerys. He flew through dragonfire for her. He came back every single time she was in danger, and then the one time she actually dies, he just melts a chair and left. That's not a glitch. That's the entire point. And if you go back and watch what Drogon was doing around Jon Snow, long before that finale, the answer was sitting right in front of us the whole time, why Drogon didn't hurt Jon. Let's go back to Season 7, Episode 5. Daenerys had just came back from destroying the Lannister supply convoy at the Blackwater Rush. She was still on Drogon's back, landing on the cliffs at Dragonstone. Jon Snow was standing there, and the second they touched down, Drogon didn't stay put. He surges toward Jon, got right in his face. Daenerys herself looked like she wasn't sure what's about to happen. Jon didn't run. He held his ground, slowly raises his hand, and Drogon drops his head and allowed him touch him. Daenerys had lived with these dragons since they hatched. She knows how they behave around strangers. Drogon, specifically, was never friendly. He's the biggest, the most aggressive, and the least tolerant of all. And Daenerys didn't fully trust him. The fact that he lets a man he's never seen before walk up and put a hand on his face is not just a cool visual, but a statement. Here's the part that really matters. Jon didn't know yet. He had no idea he was a Targaryen when that happened. He thought he was Ned Stark's bastard. He wasn't performing anything. He just stood there, and Drogon chose to accept him. So why? What did Drogon actually sense? To understand it, you have to go back further than Game of Thrones. You have to go back to old Valyria. The Targaryens weren't the only Dragonlord family in history. Before the doom of Valyria destroyed everything, there were over 40 Dragonlord families in the Freehold, all of them riding dragons, all of them competing for power, and every single one of those families practiced a very specific custom. They married within the bloodline, brothers to sisters, cousins to cousins. The reason wasn't just politics, it was because the bond between a dragon and a rider was tied to Valyrian blood. And they believed keeping that blood concentrated was how you kept the connection alive. The Targaryens brought that same custom to Westeros, 300 years of incestuous marriages, and the reason was always the same: preserve the bloodline, preserve the bond. Now in George R.R. Martin's books, during the Dance of the Dragons, which was the Great Targaryen Civil War that happened about 170 years before the events of Game of Thrones, Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen needed more dragon riders desperately. Her side was running out of people who could mount the riderless dragons on Dragonstone 1. So she put out a call for dragon seeds, screened people with Targaryen bastard blood somewhere in their family tree. 7 diluted Valyrian blood was discovered. The idea was that a dragon might still respond to it. Some of those dragon seeds succeeded. They found dragons and bonded with them. Some were killed trying. But the whole premise of that call was that dragons can sense the difference between someone with that blood and someone without it. It's not something a person can fake or perform. Either the blood is there or it isn't. Jon Snow's blood was very much there. Jon's real name is Aegon Targaryen. His father was Rhaegar Targaryen, the crown prince, and Daenerys' eldest brother, his mother, Lyanna Stark. They were secretly married before he was born, which makes Jon not a bastard at all. He's the legitimate son of the crown prince, which actually makes his claim to the Iron Throne stronger than Daenerys's. The show confirms all of this in Season 7 when Bran and Sam pieced together the marriage and the birth. But Drogon didn't need Bran's vision or Sam's research. Drogon just needed to be in the same space as Jon. And here's what makes the timeline of this so interesting. That cliffside moment where Jon touches Drogon happens before Jon himself knows any of this. Drogon reacts to Jon's blood before a single person in the story acknowledged what that blood actually was. The dragon knew before the man did. A couple of episodes later in Season 7, Episode 6, Beyond the Wall, Daenerys flies north of the wall to rescue Jon and his group from the army of the dead. Everyone who's still alive climbs onto Drogon's back to escape. Jon is the only one who didn't make it, and yes, part of that is because he was dragged into the frozen lake by Whites right before she fled. But there's something else in the books worth noting. Daenerys herself reflects that no Targaryen rider ever rode 2 dragons. Drogon is her dragon. The show quietly honors that detail by never putting Jon on Drogon's back. Instead, in Season 8, Jon rides Rhaegal, the dragon named after his own brother, Rhaegar Targaryen. And Rhaegal accepted him immediately. No hesitation, no aggression, just crouches down and lets him climb on. Jon even says he didn't know how to ride a dragon, and Daenerys tells him no one does until they do. But here's the thing, plenty of people in this world have tried to mount a dragon and been burned alive or thrown off. Rhaegal didn't give Jon the chance to fail. The dragon made the decision for him. So we get to the finale. The Red Keep is still smouldering, and actual snow is falling through the collapsed ceiling. That detail matters more than it looks. Back in Season 2, when Daenerys had her vision in the House of the Undying in Kor, she saw a destroyed throne room with something white falling from the ceiling, and fans spent years arguing about whether it was snow or ash. The actual shooting script for the finale answers it plainly. The snow falls lightly through the collapsed roof. It was always going to be snow. The vision came true, just not the way she imagined it. Jon is crouched over Daenerys' body, and Drogon comes through the smoke and lands in front of them both. He nudges her. She doesn't move, and the sound he makes when he realizes she's gone is genuinely one of the best things the show ever did. It doesn't need any dialogue. You feel it. Then he turns and looks at Jon. The show's script for this episode was made public after the finale aired, and it had a note that most people never saw about Drogon. In this moment, the writers wrote he wants to burn the world, but he will not kill Jon. Not that he can't find Jon, not that he's confused about what happened. He will not. Those are 2 completely different things. There's intent in that phrasing. A decision is being made. Drogon opens his throat, the fire starts building, and then he turns and unleashes everything into the back wall of the throne room. The Iron Throne is just sitting there in the path of it, and it melts. The actual finale script is specific about this. Drogon wasn't carefully aiming at the throne like he understood its symbolic meaning. He breathed fire at the wall, and the throne happened to be in the way, which, if anything, makes it more interesting. The destruction of the Iron Throne wasn't a deliberate political statement by a dragon who read the room. It was a byproduct of grief pointed in the wrong direction. Then he picked up Daenerys' body gently with his claws and flew east. The showrunner, David Benioff, said in the DVD commentary about the throne burning, if she's not going to sit on it, no one's going to sit on it. Which tells you the writers understood this wasn't random dragon behavior. They wrote a creature capable of identifying the source of everything that went wrong. There are actually a few things happening at once in that moment, and they don't contradict each other. They stack. First, there's the blood. Drogon had already registered Jon as Targaryen. He'd allowed him to touch him on those cliffs. He'd watched him ride Rhaegal. At whatever level a dragon processes the world, Jon was not a stranger. He was recognized. Killing him would have meant killing the last living male heir of the house that had bonded with dragons for centuries. The whole history of dragon lore in the world of Westeros suggests that isn't something a dragon does easily, if at all. Second, Drogon is not a dumb animal. The show makes this very clear from Season 5 onward. In Meereen, he sensed when Daenerys was in danger at the fighting pit and flew to her without being summoned. He understands her commands with real precision. He distinguishes between enemies and allies in the middle of a battle. A dragon with that level of awareness who flew with Daenerys through the entire burning of King's Landing, who watched her, became something different from the person who hatched him. That dragon is capable of understanding that Jon didn't kill Daenerys for power. He killed her to stop something worse. Third, and maybe most painfully, Drogon might have known that the throne was the actual thing that destroyed her, not Jon. The throne. Her obsession with it cost her Jorah, Missandei, 2 of her dragons, every ally she had, and eventually her own mind. The people who loved her dropped away one by one the closer she got to that chair. Burning it wasn't rage, it was a verdict. In A Dance with Dragons, the 5th book in the series, there's a detail Martin included about the dragon rider bond that the show only hints at. He wrote that a dragon might be able to sense when its rider is in distress or has died.
Not that it will definitely know, but that there's some connection there that runs deeper than sight or sound. Drogon didn't happen to fly to the throne room at the right moment. He was pulled there. The same sensitivity that told him something was wrong with Daenerys is the same system that registered Jon Snow as someone belonging to the same blood. The same ancient line that first created the bond between dragons and the Dragonlord families of old Valyria. These aren't 2 separate things. They're the same thing operating in 2 directions. And that same system, when faced with the choice of burning Jon or not, had a conflict it couldn't resolve, the same way it resolved every other threat. Every other person who had ever raised a hand against Daenerys was gone. Jon was different. Jon was blood of the fire made fresh, and so the fire went somewhere else. After Drogon flew east, the show mentioned in the council scene that he'd been spotted heading toward Volantis, one of the great free cities of Essos. It's brought up almost as an afterthought by Sam, something on a long list of problems for the new council to deal with. And then the conversation moved on. But Volantis was not a random Iron Throne's real executioner destination. It sits at the mouth of the Rhoynar River and acts as a gateway east toward the ruins of old Valyria itself. Drogon had actually spent time around that region before, during the period when Daenerys was ruling in Meereen and Drogon had gone off on his own. Remember, Jorah and Tyrion spotted him flying over the ruins of Valyria during their journey through the Smoking Sea in Season 5? He was drawn back to where it all started, taking his mother's body toward the origin of everything she came from. In the books, Drogon disappeared from Meereen stretches throughout the entire Meereen story. He was spotted in different parts of Essos, always moving, always returning when Daenerys needed him. He was never fully tamed and never fully gone. And after her death, going east wasn't grief with no direction, it was going home. Watch out for the Jon Snow spin-off in development. A Targaryen exiled north of the Wall, the last male heir of his house, and a dragon flying east toward the origin of that house. Those are 2 ends of the same thread. Dragon's choice in that throne room is one of the most argued over moments in the entire run of Game of Thrones, and I think it got dismissed too quickly as a plot convenience because people expected a dragon to behave like an attack dog. Go after the person who hurt your owner. But Drogon was never just an attack dog. He was the last living thing connected to a bloodline that had shaped the history of 2 continents. He spent 8 years growing alongside Daenerys, fighting her wars, carrying her to safety, watching her change. And when it ended, he didn't choose violence. He chose to recognize something older than the moment he was standing in. Jon Snow stood in the ruins of the Red Keep and didn't burn, not because the show forgot what Drogon was capable of, but because there's something in Drogon's blood or magic or whatever the Valyrians fused into the bond between their family and their dragons many years ago said, "This one is ours." The fire went into the throne instead. And honestly, for a show about what power does to people, there's no better ending for a dragon than destroying the thing that started all of it. If this breakdown changed how you see that scene, hit subscribe button because there's a lot more in this world that the show buried under the surface. Drop in the comments about what you think Drogon was going to do next. Did he journey back to Valyria or found Jon eventually? See you again in the next video. Bye.